Recording on. Cool. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tiara Moore. I'm the Director of Education and Diversity Programs at the Ecological Society of America. And I'm also the project director for this wonderful alliance and project called EcologyPlus. And I see my co-PI here, George Middendorf. If he wants to say hi, put on his video, that would be great. EcologyPlus is an alliance, as I mentioned, connecting diverse college students and early career scientists with timely and relevant career opportunities, and of course with a network of community peers and professionals in ecology and related careers. So this is a pilot project that is funded by the National Science Foundation, and we're so proud of two cohorts of our students. Today we have some of them here sharing their stories with us, and we said we really couldn't let Black History Month go by without celebrating some of their successes and accomplishments. So we have a wonderful panel that I will introduce you to in just a moment. But for now, I want to turn this over to Jessie Ribeiro, who is the project coordinator, and she'll tell us what's going on here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie Ribeiro. I'm the project coordinator here. So I am helping organize these events. And also if you get the bulletin, that's me. A quick plug, if you have any opportunities and want to send them our way, you can email us at EcologyPlus. That'd be really helpful. So just some quick housekeeping for this meeting. This is an informal discussion where we really encourage participation for you to ask questions. It makes a much better webinar. We only ask that if you do want to say something or ask questions, that if you would raise your hand before so you don't cut anyone off. And then also please keep your mic muted just in case there's any background noise. That also being said, if you have any questions in the meantime, you can post them in the chat. I'll be monitoring them and we can help bring attention to them. Also, this event will be recorded. So if you're not comfortable being on camera, feel free not to turn it on. Yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you. So next slide, Jessie. Right, so our wonderful guests today, we have three incredible students. Praise God, Igwe, who is a recent graduate, actually, congratulations. She just graduated in December from the University of Maryland. And then we have Autumn McNeil, who's now at Emory University doing her Master's of Public Health. And Elijah Catalan, a PhD student at the Institute of Environment and Sustainability, UCLA. So I'm again, really proud of what they're doing right now, and would like to invite them to share their stories with us. So let me start with Praise. Tell us a little bit about your research and how you got there.
Currently, I work in the Hamby lab in the entomology department at University of Maryland, and it's an integrated pest management lab. So we mainly focus on grain crops and small fruits, and the effects of neonicotinoid seed treatments on insect populations, specifically beetles, in long-term the Mid-Atlantic area. That's what we do.
Okay. Would you like to share a little bit about how you got to this point? How did this, interest in insects come about?
In high school, I had a research faculty project at a butterfly garden in Lothian, Maryland, and I really liked Lepidoptera, so I decided I was gonna go to school for entomology. So I thought to get a research experience in a lab at the school, and then that's how I got there.
And you haven't turned back since, right? Wonderful. Okay, Autumn, what's your story, Autumn?
Hello, everyone. My story for why I'm in the environmental space is because at Howard University, Dr. Patterson was my mentor, and he was the one who brought back the environmental studies and environmental science program. So that's how I got involved there. During the summer at Morehouse College, I know Morehouse is for guys. They have summer programs where everyone can go, I promise. It wasn't weird, but that's where I fell in love with public health. So now in school, I am doing research on climate and gentrification. and temperature change. So stay tuned for that, because I don't know how that's gonna go. But that's a little bit of my journey on how I got there.
Wonderful, Autumn. Elijah.
Hi, everybody. What I do at UCLA, my research focus is I use environmental DNA, which is basically a tool where we can monitor environments using DNA that organisms shed in the environment rather than visually seeing them. And I use that to monitor restoration and conservation activities in coastal environments in California in collaboration with community organizations and indigenous tribes.
So cool.
Thank you. The way that I got into that was I had kind of broad interest in environment at Howard University. I worked with Dr. Middendorf starting like my sophomore and freshman year studying air quality in DC. But I never really thought I'd get into marine science. I wasn't a good swimmer at all. My mom always made fun of me for like, I had to take so many swimming classes. But I did a summer program through UCLA actually with the advisor that I work with now. He takes students of color to Moorea, French Polynesia, where they have a long-term ecological monitoring site. He teaches us to scuba dive, and then we do independent research on the coral reefs there. So I thought that was really cool. It was like a transformative experience. I really got good at swimming. And he gets to take his whole family out to that island every summer. So I was like, I want to do something like this where I have a lot of freedom in what I'm studying and good quality of life. So that's kind of how I got here.
Very, very nice. So I'd like to invite the participants here, others, to please feel free to post questions or raise your hand if you want to ask questions. You know, let's just dive right in, right? And please don't be shy. You know, I'm just moderating, so I'm happy to just take your questions, and I'm sure our students will as well. But let's get into a little bit more of the science. So what is involved in, you know, your insect research or your public health research or your, you know, especially that community connection that Elijah, you were talking about. What is involved in each of those aspects? Praise, why don't we start with you?
Most of it during the field season is monitoring. You go out and you monitor insect populations. A lot of the monitoring we're doing is actually on slug populations, because we were thinking that neonicotinoids, while they affect beetles, slugs are not insects and they can eat the crop and won't be affected. But the beetles that eat them in turn are affected. So we also have to monitor non-insect populations for pest control purposes. But then during non-field season, we do a lot of bioassays inside the lab with mainly feeding bioassays with Drosophila, spotted-wing Drosophila, and red spotted lady beetles.
Okay, what are one or two findings that have captured your imagination or, you know, kind of really intrigued you?
Actually, what we found is that slug populations, them eating the neonicotinoids that like affect the beetles, like when they eat the slug, they'll be harmed. So now there's like some sort of immunity, because before we were trying to use beetle populations to control slug naturally without the use of slug baits and iron phosphate and stuff like that. But we found with seed coating, if the slugs eat the crop, then there's a less chance of them being preyed upon by the beetles.
Interesting. Okay, thanks. Autumn, how about in your area?
Since I'm doing gentrification and climate change, what we've been using is a lot of the census data. So I'm looking at data from 1980 till 2020, just going through different communities and seeing how the incorporation of green infrastructure impacts displacement of communities of color. So I've been tracking that, and we are going to look into these communities, if I can get it clear before I graduate, going into these communities to contact some of the people who have been displaced or in the process of being displaced, and just seeing their experiences with the beautification and gentrification of their neighborhoods. So.
Okay, all right, Elijah.
For eDNA, it's kind of a buzz in the marine community right now, just because it's really easy to take a eDNA sample. Like for a marine environment, all you have to do is take a few cups of water, and then the rest of the process is a little bit more involved. But because of the ease of taking the samples, there's a lot of potential for community and citizen science. So with the indigenous tribe that I work with in Santa Cruz, they have dam removal that's occurring in their watershed. So we wanted to work with them using like that environmental change as a basically a mechanism for them to learn our methods and we learn their methods. So we both bolster our own science and knowledge and ways of knowing. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Autumn, I guess it's a question for you about where you do your research. So yeah, and I know you posted a response. Would you like to kind of also say what is making you look at those cities?
So I believe one of the articles I was researching for Boston said it's one of the top cities that's actually been gentrified with a lot of displacement. So that's why I chose that area. A lot of the areas that I pick are areas that are heavily gentrified. I'm trying to find the connection for a lot of the green spaces. So for instance, like in New York around Central Park, there's a lot of gentrification now because the city's become more popular, jobs are there, and the park is beautiful, so people want to live over there. So while we know there's a connection, I'm trying to prove that connection if it makes sense. DC, I've already done a paper for my thesis at Howard, which was actually the history of gentrification in DC. So adding the environmental component to that, and I live in Atlanta. So yeah, there's that one.
It's great. Yeah, nothing like understanding your own hometown better, right? So, yeah, very good. Okay, are there questions from folks in the Zoom call? Feel free to engage with our students.
Hi, Autumn. I have a question for you. My name is Sparkle Malone. I'm an assistant professor at Florida International University in Miami. And so gentrification is a huge topic for us. One, because it has always been going on in Florida, because while the rest of the country is freezing to death, we're walking around, with our shoulders out year round. And so it's pretty nice here. And so we've attracted a lot of attention over the years, and there's always been this constant threat of gentrification in neighborhoods. But now we have all this climate related gentrification. I think we may actually be the #1 place in the country and maybe one of the most vulnerable cities to climate change. And we've been fighting this fight maybe longer than other people or other cities have really recognized it, with our issues with South Beach being underwater. Have you thought about working in coastal cities and what it means for displacement?
Yeah, so currently looking at jobs, one of the areas I was focusing on was like southern coastal cities, because like you said, a lot of them are going underwater due to sea level rise. They are popular for ecotourism or just tourism in general, which we say eco, usually it's not eco-friendly, it's just tourism. And things of that nature. So yeah, that has been an issue that I have briefly looked at. I focus more so on urban gentrification just because my family's from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in a suburban area, so I've always focused on areas that I know more about personally. But what I've seen from coastal cities is that a lot of them now are working to mitigate like their flooding, for instance, with putting in new infrastructure for pipes, which feeds into gentrification. I'm sure with you guys have seen, because improvement of living conditions usually improves property value and things of that nature. So we could definitely chat offline. I will get your contact information about that, because I can go into a whole tangent about this. But I can't, I promise you. But no, I definitely thought about it. I just haven't done a lot of the research in that particular area of gentrification, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because one thing that comes up is that, all the gentrification doesn't happen at once. They put kind of resources into a neighborhood, and then that neighborhood has more green space, and then people feel more comfortable moving into it. And so you do see these direct connections. And so it'll be really interesting to see your research.
So I will say, if you got, well, I know all cities do this for like city planning and like, those like town halls and stuff. a lot of people don't go to those, but a lot of gentrification is pre-planned because the infrastructure is pre-planned like a good 10 to 20 years out. So you can honestly track the trends from so far back. And that's why we're using data from like, what did I say, 1980? Just because that infrastructure idea is put in place a lot earlier than you see the results happen. So that's why I always recommend for people who are dealing with that issue to check their like city plan to see how far back that infrastructure was planned out to try to like track where it's gonna go. If that makes sense.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a great point. Things like this don't happen overnight, and as you say, it's intentional, right? Very interesting. Which leads you to wonder, well, with the results that we're seeing, what that intentionality is all about. What's motivating that intentionality, right? Yeah. Others in the call, do you have any questions for our participants? Okay, from Sarah. Sarah, would you be comfortable unmuting yourself and voicing your question, or would you like me to read it? There she is. Okay.
Hi. So sorry, I'm in a lobby and there's some friends around, so I wasn't sure about the noise level. But my question is, what tips do you all have for introducing incorporation of community outreach and DEI into academia in your department?
Well, maybe we start with their personal research. Why don't we start there to say, how is it that you are able to do that? I mean, were you discouraged at all? Did anybody say, why are you doing this? With all this community outreach questions and, gentrification and I don't know what, or trying to bring in community groups. What's that all about? And did you face any issues among your peers? Obviously your advisors didn't object, but, what about their colleagues, right? Did people challenge your research? Who wants to go first?
I can take a stab at it. There's definitely a lot of challenges in it, especially in the like academic science community. People often think of like community outreach as like a side gig or not part of the science. But I totally disagree with that. I think that it is more important towards the science is making that science applicable to community interests, because without that, what's the point of us even doing the science? In terms of like reaching out and creating that collaboration or getting their participation, it's best to start with like established community groups that already exist and build trust with them, because in the past, like a lot of community research that scientists and academics do has been pretty extractive or kind of marginalizes them in that field. People in the community are just as much of experts in their environment as we as scientists are, and they might have different knowledge, but a big part of what I try to do is ground truthing that knowledge, because I think that hasn't been a part of the conversation in the scientific community, and we've kind of excluded that. But getting their voices and building trust with them, I think, is the first step.
And do you see any, I don't know, resistance from other professors or other colleagues for what you're trying to do?
It depends on the professor, I guess, but I'd say the biggest like obstacle is funding and just people believing that your science is something that's worth doing. Like when you send out a proposal, people will think like, is this really relevant to the science, or like, why are you doing this if it's not like a specific science question that they've been exposed to in the past. So having people that are supportive, there are definitely like supportive professors and academics out there like Teresa and George, for example. But I'd say that that's the biggest obstacle. It's just people not thinking that it's worthwhile or that it's their job to do it.
Yeah, and probably the more that you are willing to do this and the more you open up the conversation, then they will see that there's a place for such research, or that this is legitimate research, right? Yeah. Sarah, I hope that answers your question somewhat. And Autumn, did you want to chime in?
I was just going to piggyback off of what Elijah said about people not thinking it's relevant or important. being an environmental studies major is one of the hardest things I think I've ever experienced. Just because in the science, you know, they have a lot of quant data. There's always numbers and like math you can do. You can show like the linear regression to whatever. But when you are a qualitative researcher, a lot of people don't think the work that you do is necessary just because it's harder to quantify how people feel about something or their lived experiences. So I will say that in that space, you have to advocate a lot more for the communities that you're helping to serve. So what I've seen that's worked more is going into the community first, asking what they want to do, and then finding how you can make that research happen, which kind of mitigates the issues on both ends because the community won't be mad that you just kind of came in and took over. And at the same time, you can also do research that your school or whatever entity you're working for thinks is meaningful. One of the places that I possibly may be working at, not saying no names, one of the things that they do is once they get a job, I guess, or in a certain community, they actually go to the town hall meetings and tell the community what they are supposed to be doing, just so the community can give that feedback. And when they have that buy-in, it's a lot easier to do whatever sustainable project they're supposed to do. In regards to the question that you put in the chat, Emory's public health program at Rollins, I'm in the behavioral, social, and health education sciences program. So we actually do a lot of DEI work and actually make it a point to actually have the students of color come to different meetings and things of that nature and talk to our deans and stuff. So if you're ever looking, I would say just incorporating the students or people in those marginalized communities in the conversations would probably be the best way to have that incorporation in the department and in academia. Sorry, that was a long-winded thing, but yeah.
That's great, that's great. Praise, is there something you might want to add to this conversation or any insight?
If my stuff is like relevant because it's just agriculture and most extension or / outreach we do is for farmers only at like events such as a crops twilight or things like that. So there's really no community because it's like a farm and then there's just land and land and land and land. Nobody lives there. So nobody is really affected by my work personally like that, like someone else's work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's great that, you know, that's that kind of research, basic research going on, as well as, you know, applied research, because we need to understand how our you know, ecosystems work as well. So I think this is great that, you know, we have a balance of different kinds of research happening, just hearing from the three of you. Yeah, cool. Other comments or reflections or questions? And welcome to those who just joined. Yeah. So I was actually, you know, since we're in Black History Month, I was going to ask you, are there any Black scientists or others in the Black community who inspired your interest or who helped you, you know, to be motivated and, you know, that you might want to bring up, you know, to acknowledge them during today's discussion?
I can go.
Sure.
Margaret S. Collins was the first African-American woman to be an entomologist and the third African-American woman to be a zoologist in America. And I was talking to my boss about when you approached me for this, she was like, she is so cool. She was a termite queen. And I was like, yes, because there's nobody else in my like department who looks like me, honestly. And it's nice to have someone before me, not just a niche interest, other people like bugs as well.
Nice. Praise, would you do us a favor and put her name on the chat so we can make sure we get the right name and spelling and all that? That would be wonderful. Yes, and we need to highlight that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Elijah or Autumn?
I can go. One person that I looked up to in marine science is Dr. Tiara Moore. She's a graduate of the same program that I went through that got me into marine science. And she founded the Black and Marine Science group, which is a group that is dedicated to networking and informational spaces for Black people in marine science. They do a lot of like informational videos and events. And they kind of just create a safe space for Black people in marine science. I think there's like 2% of people in marine science are Black. So it's especially coming from Howard, it's hard to like feel safe in this environment or feel like it's a place for me. But the events that she creates and the people that she helps us network with are really great. And it's great to like learn from Black people instead of all the people at UCLA are mostly white. So that's the person I look up to. And she does environmental DNA studies too. So she's a really cool person to get to know.
Nice. Yeah, please throw that in the chat as well. And that group, that network that you're talking about, that would be great to share. And others on the call too, if you have resources like this, or if you know of other networks, you know, that we all should be aware of, please do share, right? This is really a community networking here. Okay, Autumn.
Mine is the cliche one. It's Dr. Robert Bullard. He is the father of environmental justice, and he was the one who kind of brought attention to communities of color in the South who were facing these issues, even though it's kind of been colonized, but environmental justice is coming back. It's coming back. But I would say he's been one of my biggest inspirations for doing work that no one saw was important in communities and actually bringing it to the forefront of a lot of people's minds.
Wonderful. Okay, yes. Robert Bullard is definitely a big figure in environmental justice and continues to inspire all of us. Yes. Okay, great. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, I could ask one. I'm really curious because Elijah, I think I was very interested in what you were saying about like just wanting to feel a sense of belonging. And I'm kind of curious what you think, like, is it more important, like how do we as ecologists, you know, a space that isn't necessarily that diverse or hasn't been that historically, like how do we make a more different type of population like feel excited and welcome in science, you know, like you were saying having someone kind of senior to you who's like shows an example that you can learn from, but then what if also do you need a lot more peers who are more of different backgrounds on your level, or is it more that having diverse mentors, or like, I don't know, like what's kind of how, you know, we really want to change ecology so it represents society more broadly. So like, what do you think as someone who's living it are like the most helpful ways, you know, that we can all do better with that? And of course, all of you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like what's the most makes you feel like you have that seat at the table, you know?
Yeah, so before I have Elijah and the panel respond to that, I just want to remind everybody that, you know, this is something that I think it is perfectly fine and great that, you know, we ask our students to share what worked for them. But I think, you know, let's not try to think as if, you know, that it's something that will happen automatically, or, you know, I think all of us would just have to keep working at it. There's just no single thing, right, that's going to work for everybody, every situation. There's no magic bullet here, you know. So, but yeah, maybe our students would like to share what is it that worked for them.
Yeah. Thanks, Teresa. And definitely no silver bullet to this, but I think it's a mixture of both of the things that you were getting at, Samantha. Having diverse mentors is really key to making it feel like accessible or something that I can see myself doing. Like for example, if I look at Howard, most of the bio majors at Howard are pre-med because that's kind of their vision of success is like a doctor, but they don't really think about professor or researcher as something that's accessible to them. And a lot of people kind of misconstrue what a researcher is and who you have to be to do that. But definitely I would stress having a community of peers is key to feeling comfortable in this environment. The program that I was talking about that took us to Morea, one of my best friends at Howard also went with me, and it was a bunch of different Black students from HBCUs and other students of color that went along, and it really gave us a sense of community and feeling like it was just fun. You know, you don't want to work where it's not fun, where you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. So I think that was a big part of making me want to stay in this field, is knowing that there are other people of my same age that I can hang out with that do the same things.
Okay. Praise or Autumn, we don't chime in?
I can. In my department at school now, we have like a Black chat for like us. Like I know all the international students have their own groups. So finding your belonging group has always been very important for me, especially when I go into PWIs or predominantly white spaces in general. Having diverse mentors, as Elijah said, and you alluded to, Samantha is also important, but also just having, even if they're not necessarily Black like I am, having people who are willing to put their hand out or like reach back for people who are interested in this field or in this work, having people who are willing to mentor, because some of my best mentors aren't Black. Like, what is this woman's name? Julia Smith at the CDC is one of my favorite people, but she is a white woman. She's always sent me opportunities, always looked out for me, always made sure that I got the resources I needed. So just having someone looking out for you so then you can also go back and pull someone up as well.
Thanks, Autumn. Praise, would you like to add something? Yep.
I agree with what Elijah said about how most Black people, when they think of like a STEM job, they think of being a doctor or like engineering or computer science. Now it's mainly about like what has the most visibility as success in your community. I don't think there's enough visibility for ecological jobs in Black communities, to be honest. Like most people don't think of them when they think of a type of scientist, let's say. So just raising awareness that these jobs are out there and they exist, and these careers are out there and they exist, I think would help a lot.
Thanks, Praise. Yes, and I think connecting with those networks that Elijah mentioned, I think there are many more now coming up. I keep seeing them on Twitter, for example. It will be helpful, right? If your program connects with those organizations or networks. ESA has the SEEDS program, for example, and we have EcologyPlus, for example. So connect with us, right? And there are things like this that you can do. So I think it's also really important to make sure that we're not putting the onus on people of color and Black people to solve these problems. I think that's really, really important, right? We all have to step up for this. Okay, great. Other questions? These are all great questions. Anything about their research that people are interested in or curious about, or maybe have suggestions on, or ways to connect with what you are doing, perhaps?
Well, I could say something about I work at the National Ecological Observatory Network, or NEON. I don't know if you all have heard of that. Maybe it depends on your field, whether that's relevant to you. We don't do social science, so sorry, Autumn. Although it'd be very interesting. I mean, if you wanted to come work with us, but it's more of like monitoring of biodiversity and carbon cycling and disease ecology, and we make all the data open and publicly available. So I was thinking, I don't know, there might be. We do eDNA, not in the oceans, but in lakes and rivers all over the United States. We have publicly available data on microbial marker genes and also some shotgun sequencing of filtered water samples. And we also do collect beetles and bycatch in the beetles. And some of these are in agricultural systems, and some are in more like natural forest and grassland systems. So just something maybe to be aware of. I don't know if the students have all heard of the National Ecological Observatory Network, but it's a cool program and a lot of data available, and it's open to anyone. And so if there happen to be any intersections with things you're thinking about, or it would be interesting to kind of look across a broad network of sites, I could just throw that out there. If anything clicks for you, you can feel free to get in touch with us or download our data and check it out.
Thanks, Samantha. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Other comments, thoughts?
What are your next steps? What are you guys hoping to do? I think you're all undergraduates, is that correct?
They're all at different stages. Actually, none of them are undergrads.
So you're all in graduate programs now, master's, PhD?
Praise is not yet. She's recent grad. So she just graduated in December. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, great question. Next steps.
For me, it's going to take a while before I move on to my next step. I'm in the second year of my PhD, so I still have to propose my thesis and defend it. So I still have a lot of time. But I'm keeping my options open right now. I might go back into academia, or I might do more like community work or go into a governmental organization. But that's the thing I like about a PhD, is that I have all these options to think about. So.
Well, maybe as a next step, in terms of for you, are there additional ideas that you would like to build into your research that maybe you haven't quite figured it out yet, but you would like to explore?
There's a ton of things I'd like to explore. It's having the time to explore them that I'm struggling with. I definitely like to do more work with specifically like Black communities in Los Angeles. I do some volunteer work with an organization called the Better Watts Initiative, where they're dedicated towards environmental advocacy for Watts, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles. So I want to do some more ecological work with them, because right now I do more environmental health work with them, working on lead remediation. But I want to see how I might collaborate with them in other areas, get them close to the coast, or they also have a lake in Watts that has a lot of environmental pollution. So, and they fish from it and eat those fish. So I want to see kind of the impacts of that and how they want to monitor that, or what they want to learn from their own environment. That's something I want to get.
Very nice, very nice, great. Autumn?
So yes to Sky. I went right after undergrad. I do not recommend it. If you can take a break, I would take a break. Elijah, you did too, right? We did at the same time?
Yeah, straight into PhD.
So yes, take a break. What was the question? I am so sorry. I was reading that one. I got very distracted. What are our next steps? Okay. So I will be graduating with my Master's of Public Health in May, and I am looking to take either a gap year or two, working either the nonprofit sector or within environmental consulting. There aren't a lot of environmental studies consultants, so I'm trying to move into that area while there's no one else in it. That's really it for my next steps as of right now. I don't know what I want my PhD in yet.
But she's planning on it. That's good. All right. Praise.
Right now, I'm just working in the Handy Lab still. And I'm probably going to keep being a tech there for a while. And then I'm going to try to apply to grad school. That's for entomology. Next fall or this fall, hopefully, I want to get my degree in systematics or bioinformatics. So I could do I want to do insect collections, but a lot of collections are moving to like more genomic. So they're instead of just doing type with you know how types work, how you have to look at a species and then compare. So now they're keeping catalogs of like, so you can compare the DNA of one to another. So that's how you sort instead of just visually. So that's what I want to do. Personally, probably.
Anybody who are bug experts here want to connect with Praise? And actually in this area, Praise, that there is a really great entomologist, well, particularly bees, but you know, we should talk at some point. But yeah, so and what about
I can jump in really quick. Praise, there's a lot of need for taxonomic experts for invertebrates for eDNA. Like if I'm trying to take a eDNA sample and measure biodiversity, I can do it for vertebrates, but right now, because none of the marine invertebrates have been sequenced, it's impossible to do that. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know and we can get in contact, because that's something.
So Sky, you're a bee person. Okay, you want to tell us a little bit about your interests?
I'm just a general insect person. Insects get me so excited, and I'm really interested in ecology and conservation of insects. I'm at a really small institution, so I don't really have a lot of opportunities to work with bugs. We actually don't have any research opportunities for students at all here, so I have to go outside and do like REUs and things like that. So I'm hoping for an insect-related one this summer. But yeah, I'm really interested in pollinators, just in general, anything insect related. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Praise, do you have any recommendations for her?
Yes, I will email you. Actually, you should put your email in the chat so I can email you about this, because I get a lot of like emails about opportunities. So I'll send them.
Great. Can you name one or two things maybe while we are on the call? Like maybe the first thing that she ought to look at, just for the record, while we are, since this is being recorded. Oh, you're muted.
Have you heard of EntoPOC?
Say that again.
EntoPOC, so ENTOPOC. It's the organization for entomologists of color. So if you can just join, you don't have to like pay a fee or anything. Just join, and then you can get on their mailing list, and they'll send out things every so often. They're right, like next month, there's going to be Entomological Society of America, the other ESA, is having an Eastern Branch meeting in Philadelphia. If you're in the DC area, there's also, are you into collections or not? I don't want to like bombard you.
I'm interested in anything insect related.
Okay, so there's like there's a collections network, the ECN, Entomological Collections Network, that meet in DC every month, but now they've gone virtual, and they just have somebody tour their museum once a month, and you can just sign up. I'll send you all the links. Please.
Grace, please do. If you can, you just put some of those acronyms. I think EnTOPOC you were saying, and you know what the other ESA. Just throw in the chat just for the record. Thank you. Okay, right, cool. Actually, talking about tips, are there other tips that that you may have for how to decide on what research topics to focus on, or how do you select a graduate program, or you know how do you know? How do you know where to go? Like, you know, Elijah, you mentioned there's so many things that, you know, you could do. How are you going to decide? Do you have any ideas or tips for that? Or maybe you might need some yourself.
The way that I decided was that I was really able to not decide. My PhD program is an interdisciplinary program, so I have a lot of freedom to just do whatever I want and explore things. I have 2 advisors, for example, where a typical PhD program you only have 1. So my 2 are from kind of different backgrounds, and they do a lot of different stuff. So aside from the EDNA, I get to do stuff with like public health and environmental health. I still do some of the same things I did with Dr. Middendorf. I had TA a class where we study indoor air quality. We do research with the students in that class. So don't feel like if you pick a research interest or a research topic for grad school, that you have to do that all the time. Like you have freedom to branch out, even if there's like you're an expert in one thing, you can be experts in many things. So that's one piece of advice I'd say. I'll toss it to Autumn and Pray.
Similar to that, in my program, we have certificates. So the certificates are in areas that if you didn't go to this department, because we call it departments, not majors. So I'm in the behavioral department, but my certificate is in climate and health. You can do one that's water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's all the areas that we didn't pick as our departments, basically became certificates for us. And also, when you're at a big university, you can do a lot. Like Elijah said, you can TA for a class, you can become a GRA, graduate research assistant, or a professor or a researcher in a different part of the school. It's very easy. And I feel like networking in universities is a lot easier because they're professors and they want to help you. And it's free labor most of the time. So they'll be fine. They will be fine. So try a lot of things. And also I will say master's programs are good for trying something for a shorter period of time because it's only 2 years. I know I like behavioral science, but if I didn't, it was still only 2 years and I got my degree out of it, but I also got a lot of opportunities to do other things that I enjoyed.
Great.
I would say talk to people. Just talk. If you just find someone who's a grad student or a professor and just talk to them. Just do a cold email like, hey, I'm interested in this, I want to know more about this, and then have a 30-minute meeting with them about their area of interest. And you can do that for lots of people. And then you can just field ideas for what you want to do personally. When I was about to graduate in November, I emailed like 5 different people, my professors, some grad students, and they all gave me ideas and tips, and that helped me really narrow down what I want to do when I go to grad school. So I think that's really helpful. Also tonight, there's going to be, and this is just going back to old things, but there's going to be an Ento trivia night. I'm not sure if you can get in because it's University of Maryland Zoom, but I'm pretty sure they'll just let you in. And I can send you the link for that as well. So those are networking opportunities where you can talk to people and you can see what you like and what you don't like.
Wonderful. Thank you. These are all great tips. Yeah.
I will say, always try something, even if you don't know if you'll like it or not, like Chris was saying, because it's better to know what you don't like than what you do like.
At least in the initial stages, right? When you're trying to narrow things down. Yeah, absolutely. Leave no stone unturned. Yes. Explore what critters are hiding under those rocks. Okay. Wonderful. Jessie, do you have anything that you might want to throw out here?
Oh man, Tracy, you're putting me on the spot. Let me think. I'm really resonating with this conversation because I'm relatively a recent graduate of undergrad and deciding on what my next steps are. So I guess when you were looking at universities, kind of where did you start your search and how did you determine that it would be a good fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, do you start from research topics, right? Like somebody who is in your research area of interest, or did you start with like, I want a big university, or did you start with, I want to know whether there are, people like me, there. So yeah, that's a great question.
How I did it was I found out that what I wanted to do, not necessarily like a research topic or like an area. I wanted to work in communities of color and do environmental work. So then I was like, okay, what area of the environment do I want to work in? And kind of backtracked from that to pick what I wanted to do, because like, for instance, Rollins is top 4 in the nation for public health. So like, that was one of the reasons I picked this school. It's in a community of color. There are a lot of disparities I could work on here, like, and be on the ground. And it's a really good school. So that's kind of how I worked it. And the people are great. I always say visit the university if you can and talk to people in person. Do not let recruiters fool you on the little webinars and calls and tell you everything is great. And then you get there, everyone's miserable. So I always say visit. If you have people in the area that you can stay with, so you can actually go on a day that's like not like a show students day, I recommend that as well.
Yeah, everything Autumn said is very true. When I was looking at grad schools, I kind of got in trouble with George because he was helping me with figuring out what I wanted to do. He said that I was looking too broad. I applied to a couple of different programs and they were all different with kind of different advisors, but my process was I looked at different universities that I was interested in because location is important. I didn't want to be like in the middle of nowhere with people that I wouldn't be able to work with, or a place that I would be unhappy. So I looked location, then I went through what different programs they had and looked at the faculty that were in those programs. And if there were faculty that were like, oh, I might want to do something that you're doing, I reached out and talked to them to see if that was something of interest. I ended up landing at UCLA with people that I already knew and people that I already worked with. Because it was a comfortable environment and I knew I would have a good support group here. So I think that's super important when thinking about grad programs.
Also, like Elijah said, talking to the professors that you could possibly work with is also very important, because you can get to a school and think they have someone doing the research you want to do, but then get there and they're not there no more, or they're no longer doing that project. And if you want to do work that they're doing, you might want to email them before you get there just to see if they're still going to be working on that, because a lot of times you can become their GRAs and get paid. So that's how I got one of my jobs, by just emailing people. So, and sometimes they know tuition waivers and financial aid things that they don't post on the website as well.
Yep. Very good. Are there other questions or comments? Any words of encouragement for our students? George, did you just unmute yourself? Did you want to say something?
I think he's been having audio issues.
Yeah.
He put it in the chat earlier. He's
Yeah.
in Suriname. I hope you're enjoying it out there, George.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. For a whole month. I'm like, okay. Oh, well, sorry that you can't be heard here, George. But thank you for coming. And anybody else would like to say, we have a couple of minutes left. So anybody else would like to join in this conversation?
I just wanted to, I wanted to chime in and just say, I thought this was really interesting. I know I joined late, but I thought also that there was some really good advice being put out there. And I'm just happy to see that you all are, continuing after undergrad and chasing masters or PhD programs, and just keep it up. Keep your heads up.
Kwanzaa, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure, I'll turn my camera on too. Hi, everyone. I'm Kwanzaa Johnson. I'm the Academic Programs Coordinator for the Northeast Fisheries Science Center for NOAA. I am a seeds. I've attended some seeds field trips, and I did my undergrad at an HBCU down in Florida. I'm an environmental scientist by training, and I describe myself now as a social scientist, in that I do a lot for DEI work, and I work heavily with, students of color and bringing them into the sciences. And so I'm just a champion for ESA and seeds, and I'll be doing a lot with EcologyPlus. George and I will be helping to run the DC hub. So I'm very happy about that. And I also help just in my day-to-day tasks with different again, minority serving programs and internships that is recent graduates you all are eligible for, but graduate students, unfortunately, we only have, there's other programs that NOAA has that they definitely offer, but any recent graduates, our application closes tomorrow for one of our internships. But if you're interested, I'll put my email in the chat, and maybe what they can do is sort of, keep an eye out for your application materials, or you can send them to a teammate. But the program is called InFish, and it's specifically a NOAA regional-based program. So I'll put some links in the chat. But thank you, Teresa, for that time to introduce myself.
Thanks, Kwanzaa. Okay.
Just a comment from Dr. Middendorf, where to go. Collins was still teaching at Howard when he arrived, and she was great. And he heard stories about her when he was in Guyana, where she did her research.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Well, so if there are no more comments or questions, okay, maybe what we'll do then is final thoughts from each of our panelists, and then I'll turn it over to Jessie for some announcements. So, Praise, any final thoughts?
I don't really have any. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough.
Praise, I can give one final thought that just was directed to you. Is it's cool to hear how excited you are about collections and systematics, because I feel like on some level people might think, oh, that's like old school ecology, and then there's more new school ecology, but collections are evolving, and there's like all these intersections, like you say, between genomics and informatics and collections. And it's just really cool to hear your enthusiasm for and interest with kind of like being at the forefront of that. And we do a lot of collecting and augmenting collections at NEON. So thank you for just telling your story. It's cool to hear.
Yeah. Definitely. And Praise, I'll also give you some of the links for collections people. But yeah, taxonomy, I think those skills we're losing somehow. So I'm really happy that, you are interested in that. And, there's still a lot of organisms that we have no names for. So who knows, maybe one day, you might find that you can name your own species, and you can discover them. Yeah. Yes, especially insect taxonomy, indeed. Thanks, Guy. Okay, Autumn.
If anyone would like to connect, My email is in the chat. You can find me on Instagram at Environmental Bay or Public Health Barbie. I like Barbie as a child. I'm sorry, it's a thing. And yeah, I would love to hear more about what you guys do individually. And I would love to connect if anyone has any more questions about grad school life or would like to visit Emory, because we are great.
Nice. Elijah.
Echoing what Praise and Autumn said, I put my email in the chat as well. So if you'd like to connect, or if you have any opportunities that you'd like to connect me with, or you'd like opportunities that I can connect you with, let me know. And thanks Teresa and everyone from ESA for putting this event together. It was really nice to be in community with y'all. It's great to hear praises in insect ecology, because I didn't know that any Black people would want to do that. So I think that's really awesome, and it takes a lot of courage to get into fields that a lot of us aren't in. And it's great to see Autumn again. We went to undergrad together. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming.
Wonderful, thank you. Jessie, so final announcements.
Let me just share my screen really fast. So we have another event coming up, and I'll drop that link shortly. It's going to be on February 24th at 4 p.m. same time. It's a career panel with actually 2 of our EcologyPlus mentors and another person who works on the Hill. Well, they'll talk to us about environmental policy, advocacy, and law, and how science interacts with that. So it'll be a good exploration on how you can get involved in that field. So if you're interested, please join us.
Yes. Oh, there's a question here. Tell you about a little bit more about EcologyPlus. Sure. So well, so this is an alliance, an NSF-funded project. It includes project, and we're trying to connect undergrads, graduate students, and early career scientists with opportunities and a community. And so these kinds of events are one of the things that we do. It's a pilot project right now, just based solely on in DC. So all of these students, they were in the DC area, when they were in undergrad, yeah, and we also have some graduate students here locally, and we've been trying to bring together the early career people here, but until COVID hit. So COVID really messed us up big time, and I'm sure with everybody else as well. And we're trying to actually we've put in another proposal for a bigger alliance, a national alliance, to go beyond, to go outside DC. So that's involving a few cities. Actually, Atlanta is one of them, and Baltimore and St. Louis and New Jersey, so and Kansas City, Kansas. So these are some of the areas that we're looking at. Going into the heartland of the U.S. as well as some of the more coastal areas. But yeah, at least we're trying to branch out. But yeah. And we also do one-to-one mentoring. We have a platform for virtual mentoring that we're offering to our students. So this is being piloted as well. And as we go forward, we'll be able to expand it more. But right now, it's just for the small cohort that we have working with us. Yeah. So definitely, we're looking for resources. We have the bulletin. I think Jessie mentioned that we send out every week. And so if you have students, or if you have others who are interested in signing up for the bulletin, or sending us information about your opportunities, whether it's jobs or internships, so definitely send that to us, or events. So we would love to share those resources with our community as well. Okay, yeah, thank you, Jessie. And that's the EcologyPlus at esa.org. So simple enough. Yeah, so, really appreciate everybody coming here tonight. And again, thank you to Praise and Autumn and Elijah. You're doing wonderful work. I mean, really pushing the frontiers in every way possible that imaginable. So thank you for doing that. And you are really you folks that I'm going to be following your career to see how where you go and how you're doing, and because we're so excited for you. So thank you all very much, and hope everybody comes back next week. We will have another event. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.